The fluorescent lights of the Golden Serpent Casino hummed their eternal song at 3 in the morning, casting harsh shadows across the burgundy carpets that had seen more broken dreams than fulfilled promises. In the heart of Atlantic City, where the ocean breeze carried both salt and secrets, this particular establishment stood as a monument to excess, owned by a man whose name people whispered rather than spoke aloud. Vincent Costello moved through his casino like a shark through dark waters, his tailored Italian suit worth more than most people earned in 6 months. At 42, he had inherited his father's empire and multiplied it tenfold, building a network that stretched from the boardwalk to the docks, from legitimate businesses to operations that existed in the comfortable gray areas of the law. His dark eyes missed nothing, a trait that had kept him alive and powerful in a world where weakness meant extinction. Tonight, something caught his attention. A figure moving near the high-stakes poker room, pushing a cleaning cart with quiet efficiency. Vincent had made it a habit to walk his casino floor at odd hours, believing that a king should know every corner of his kingdom. But this woman, this cleaner working at an hour when even the most desperate gamblers had stumbled home, sparked his curiosity. She was younger than he expected, maybe early 30s with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her uniform was clean but worn, the fabric thin at the elbows. What struck Vincent most was not her appearance but her movements, methodical, quick, almost frantic. She scrubbed the baseboards with an intensity that seemed personal, as if she were trying to erase more than just dirt. Elena Martinez had been invisible her entire life, and she preferred it that way. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant she could do her work, collect her paycheck, and get home before the sun came up. She had been cleaning the Golden Serpent for 8 months now, always taking the graveyard shift because it paid an extra $2 per hour, and those dollars meant everything. She didn't notice Vincent at first, too focused on the stubborn stain near the card table. Her supervisor had warned her that Mr. Costello himself sometimes walked the floors at night, and that getting caught slacking meant immediate termination. Elena couldn't afford to lose this job. She couldn't afford to lose any of her 3 jobs. Her fingers were raw, the skin cracked despite the cheap lotion she applied every night. The vacuum cleaner hummed as she pushed it across the carpet, its motor wheezing like an old man with emphysema. She glanced at her watch, a cheap digital thing with a cracked screen, and calculated how much time she had left. Finish here by 4, home by 4:30, 2 hours of sleep, then wake up at 6:30 to get Sophia ready for school. Sophia. The thought of her daughter was what kept Elena moving when her body screamed for rest. 7 years old with her father's dark eyes and Elena's stubborn chin. The child who asked why mommy was always so tired, why they couldn't afford the field trip to the science museum, why they ate pasta 3 times a week. Vincent watched the cleaner check her watch for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Most of his employees avoided eye contact with him, as if looking directly at the sun might burn them. This woman hadn't even noticed he was there. Too consumed by whatever private urgency drove her, he stepped closer, his leather shoes silent on the plush carpet. Elena sensed him before she saw him, that primal instinct that prey develops when predators are near. She turned, her breath catching when she recognized Vincent Costello from the employee orientation video. In person, he was more imposing than on screen. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a presence that filled the space around him. Drop the rag, she told herself. Show respect. She straightened up, wiping her hands on her uniform, trying to appear professional despite the exhaustion that pulled at her bones like gravity. Mr. Costello, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I apologize if I disturbed you. I'll move to another section if you need privacy. Vincent studied her face, noting the dark circles under her eyes, the hollow look that spoke of missed meals and sleepless nights. He had seen that look before, on people who owed money to the wrong people, on mothers trying to feed children in a city that devoured the weak. What's your name, he asked, though he made it sound less like a question and more like a command. Elena Martinez, sir. I'm with the night cleaning crew. How long have you been working here, Elena Martinez? 8 months, sir. I've never had any complaints. I do my job well. Vincent nodded slowly, his gaze drifting to her hands, to the raw knuckles and the way she favored her right wrist as if it pained her. I'm sure you do. Tell me, Elena, why are you working at 3 in the morning? Most people prefer daylight shifts. The question landed like a trap, and Elena felt her heart rate spike. She had learned long ago that powerful men asked questions they already knew the answers to, that honesty was sometimes the only currency the powerless possessed. "The night shift pays better, sir, and it allows me to work during hours when my daughter is sleeping." "How old is your daughter?" 7. She's in 2nd grade. "And her father?" Elena's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping near her temple. The question was invasive, inappropriate, but men like Vincent Costello didn't concern themselves with boundaries. "Not in the Navy anymore," she said, which was technically true. Miguel had been dishonorably discharged 3 years ago, had returned home with demons she couldn't fight and addictions she couldn't afford. The divorce had been quick, the custody battle quicker. He sent no money, made no calls, existed only as a ghost of broken promises. Vincent heard what she didn't say, reading the story in her silence. He had grown up in a world where single mothers worked themselves to death trying to keep food on the table, where children went without because fathers were absent or worse. His own mother had scrubbed floors until her hands bled, had hidden bruises under makeup and smiled through the pain. "You work other jobs," he said, statement not question. Elena hesitated, then nodded. "I clean offices downtown from 6 to noon, and I work at a diner from 1 to 7 in the evening. Then I come here." The math was simple and brutal. 20 hours a day, 6 days a week, maybe 7, which meant this woman slept in whatever stolen moments she could find, sacrificed her health, her youth, her very existence on the altar of survival. "When do you sleep?" Vincent asked, his tone shifting into something that might have been curiosity or might have been something more dangerous. "When I can," Elena said simply. "Sir, if there's something wrong with my work, please tell me directly. I can fix it. I need this job." The desperation in her voice was naked, unguarded, and it stirred something in Vincent that he had thought long dead, a memory of his mother on her knees, begging his father for grocery money while the old man counted bills he would spend at the track. "Your work is fine," Vincent said, his voice dropping to a softer register that his associates would not have recognized. "Better than fine. This section is cleaner than it's been in months." Relief washed over Elena's face, so profound that Vincent felt something twist in his chest. "Thank you, sir. I should get back to it. I have 3 more rooms to finish before my shift ends." She turned back to her cart, dismissing him with the unconscious ease of someone too tired to remember fear. Vincent stood there for a long moment, watching her scrub and wipe and polish, her movements economical and efficient, the choreography of someone who had learned to squeeze every second from time. He should have walked away. He had spreadsheets to review, phone calls to make to associates in New York and Boston, decisions to render about shipments and territories, and the 1,000 small matters that kept his empire running. But something kept him rooted there, watching this woman battle against exhaustion and poverty with nothing but determination and a bottle of generic cleaning spray. Elena felt his presence like a weight, but she forced herself to ignore it, to focus on the work. Rich men watched poor people the way scientists observed insects, with detached curiosity, wondering how such creatures survived. She had been watched before, had learned to keep her head down and her mouth shut, but Vincent Costello wasn't watching her like an insect. He was watching her like a puzzle he needed to solve, and that was far more dangerous. Finally, he spoke again. "The casino provides health insurance for full-time employees. Are you full-time?" "Part-time," Elena said, not looking up from the baseboard she was scrubbing. 29 hours a week, just under the threshold for benefits. Vincent's jaw tightened. It was a common trick, one he had allowed his operations manager to implement to save money on overhead. Keep workers just below the line. Save on insurance, retirement, all the expensive obligations that ate into profit margins. It was good business, ruthless business, the kind of decision that separated successful operators from failed ones. But standing here at 3 a.m, watching a woman work herself to death because she was 1 hour short of health care for her daughter, the decision felt different. It felt like a choice his father would have made, the kind of casual cruelty that had marked the old man's reign. "I'll speak to HR," Vincent said abruptly. "You'll be moved to full-time status starting next week." Elena's hand stopped moving. She turned slowly, searching his face for the trap, the hidden cost. In her experience, powerful men didn't give gifts without expecting payment. "Sir, I don't understand." "Why would you do that?" Vincent met her eyes, seeing the intelligence there, the wariness born of hard experience. "Because you work harder than anyone else in this building," he said, "and because my mother once cleaned floors at 4 in the morning to feed me and my sister. Consider it good business. I prefer to keep quality employees." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was true enough. Elena stared at him for 3 full seconds, and Vincent saw the moment she decided to accept the gift without examining it too closely. Because survival meant taking what you could get when you could get it. "Thank you, Mr. Costello," she said quietly. You don't know what this means, but he did know. It meant co-pays instead of emergency room bills. It meant antibiotics when Sophia got sick instead of hoping the fever broke on its own. It meant a tiny buffer between this woman and the abyss that waited to swallow her whole. Vincent nodded once, then turned and walked away, leaving Elena standing there with tears she refused to shed burning behind her eyes. She waited until his footsteps faded, until the casino floor was silent again except for the whisper of ventilation and the distant cry of slot machines, before she allowed herself one shaking breath. Then she picked up her rag and went back to work, because the floors wouldn't clean themselves and she still had 2 more jobs to get through before she could sleep. But for the first time in months, maybe years, Elena Martinez allowed herself the dangerous luxury of hope. Vincent returned to his office, poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon from the crystal decanter on his desk, and stood at the window overlooking the boardwalk. The ocean was invisible in the darkness, but he could hear it. That eternal rhythm of waves against sand, indifferent to human suffering and human striving alike. He thought about his mother, dead now 15 years, her hands still scarred from decades of harsh chemicals and hard work. He thought about the promise he had made at her grave, that he would be different from his father, that power would not make him cruel. It was a promise he had broken more times than he could count, compromised by necessity and ambition, and the cold calculus of survival in a world that rewarded ruthlessness. But tonight, watching Elena Martinez fight her quiet battle against exhaustion and poverty, he had remembered why he made that promise in the first place. Vincent drained his bourbon and set the glass down with a soft click. Tomorrow, he would speak to his operations manager about employee benefits, about the arbitrary line between part-time and full-time that saved pennies and cost souls. It was a small thing, negligible in the grand scheme of his business, but small things mattered when you were drowning. The city lights glittered below like scattered diamonds, beautiful and cold, and Vincent Costello made a decision that would change 2 lives forever. Though neither of them knew it, 3 weeks passed before Vincent saw Elena again. His operations manager, a nervous man named Russo who sweated through expensive shirts, had implemented the changes without question. 6 employees were moved to full-time status, Elena Martinez among them. Vincent told himself it was a broader policy decision, not about one exhausted woman scrubbing floors at ungodly hours. But at 2:30 in the morning on a Tuesday, he found himself walking the casino floor again, his steps leading him toward the areas Elena typically cleaned. He told himself he was checking on the quality of work, ensuring his investment in employee benefits was justified. The lie was transparent even to him. She was there in the VIP lounge, but something was wrong. Elena moved more slowly than before, favoring her right side, and when she reached up to dust the crown molding, Vincent saw her wince and press a hand to her ribs. He approached quietly, and this time she sensed him immediately, turning with that same guarded expression he remembered. "Mr. Costello," she said, straightening despite the obvious pain it cost her. "Good evening, sir." "You're hurt," Vincent said, dispensing with pleasantries. "What happened?" Elena's hand dropped from her side. "Nothing, sir. I'm fine. Just pulled a muscle moving furniture at my other job." The lie was obvious, written in the careful way she held herself, in the fresh bruise he could see peeking out from under her collar. Vincent had seen enough violence in his life to recognize its aftermath. "Which job?" he asked, his voice dropping into that dangerous quiet that made his associates nervous. "The office cleaning downtown." One of the desks was heavier than I expected. Vincent studied her face, noting the way her eyes didn't quite meet his, the tension in her shoulders. He pulled out his phone and made a call, not asking permission, ignoring her protests. "Marco," he said when his head of security answered. "I need you to look into something. Elena Martinez works for us in housekeeping. Find out where else she works and what happened to her in the last 48 hours. He ended the call and looked back at Elena, whose face had gone pale. "Sir, that's not necessary. I'm fine, really. I don't want any trouble. Trouble already found you," Vincent said. "Now sit down before you fall down." Elena wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain the illusion of control over her own life, but her ribs were screaming and her legs felt like water. She sank into one of the plush chairs reserved for high rollers, chairs she had cleaned 1,000 times but never sat in. Vincent disappeared for a moment, returning with a first aid kit from behind the bar. He set it on the table between them and waited. "Show me," he said. Elena shook her head. "Mr. Costello, I appreciate your concern, but this is inappropriate. You're my employer, I'm your employee, and I need to get back to work before what? Before someone else decides to use you as a punching bag." The words hung in the air like smoke. Elena's throat tightened. Tears she refused to shed burning behind her eyes. "Nobody used me as anything," she said quietly. "I walked into a door." Vincent's expression didn't change, but something cold settled in his chest. His mother had said the same thing, dozens of times, always with the same hollow conviction. Doors, cabinets, stairs. The architecture of abuse had many convenient excuses. "Elena," he said, and hearing her name from his lips made something crack in her carefully constructed walls. "Tell me what happened. The truth." She looked at him then, really looked at him, seeing past the expensive suit and the reputation, finding something that might have been genuine concern. It was that glimpse of humanity that broke her. "My ex-husband found out I got full-time hours here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He showed up at the diner where I work evenings. Said I owed him half of any raise I got. Said Sophia was his daughter too and he deserved his share. When I told him I didn't get a raise, just benefits, he got angry. Said I was lying, that I was hiding money from him. And then," Vincent prompted, though he already knew. "Then he followed me to my car after my shift. Wanted to check my purse, said he knew I was holding out on him. When I refused, he grabbed me, pushed me against the car. Got a few hits in before the cook came out and scared him off." Vincent's hands clenched into fists, knuckles going white. He forced himself to breathe, to think clearly through the red haze that wanted to cloud his judgment. "Did you file a police report?" Elena laughed, a bitter sound without humor. "And tell them what?" "That my ex-husband roughed me up a little. That he didn't break anything, so it doesn't really count. The restraining order I already have isn't worth the paper it's printed on. Miguel knows how to dance right up to the line without crossing it. That's not how restraining orders work. That's exactly how they work when you're poor, Mr. Costello. The police have actual crimes to solve, actual emergencies to handle. A domestic dispute that didn't end in hospitalization doesn't rate their time or attention." Vincent knew she was right, had seen the same dynamic play out in his own neighborhood growing up. The law protected those who could afford protection, while everyone else learned to fend for themselves or suffer the consequences. His phone buzzed. A text from Marco with preliminary information. Miguel Santos, dishonorably discharged from the Navy 3 years ago for drug-related offenses. Current whereabouts unknown but last known address in Ventnor City. Multiple arrests for possession and assault. Most charges dropped or pled down. Elena's restraining order on file. Violation reported twice. No arrests made. Vincent looked up from his phone to find Elena watching him with resignation in her eyes, as if she expected him to fire her now, to decide she was too much trouble, too much drama for a simple housekeeping position. Instead, he said, "You're not working at the diner anymore." Elena's eyes widened. "Excuse me, you heard me. You're not going back to that job. It's not safe, Mr. Costello, I need that job. I can't afford to." "I'm increasing your hours here," Vincent interrupted. 45 hours a week with overtime pay. You'll make more than you were making at all 3 jobs combined. And you'll do it in one location where I can ensure your safety." Elena stared at him, trying to process what he was saying, looking for the trap because there had to be a trap. Men like Vincent Costello didn't throw life preservers to drowning women without expecting something in return. "What do you want from me?" she asked bluntly, too tired for games. Vincent met her eyes, seeing the fear there, the expectation of exploitation. The question made him angrier than anything else that night. Not at her, but at the world that had taught her to expect the worst from every offered kindness. "I want you to be able to sleep more than 2 hours a night," he said, his voice rough. "I want your daughter to have a mother who isn't working herself to death. I want to know that when you leave here, you're not walking into a situation where someone uses you as a punching bag. That's what I want, Elena. Nothing more, nothing less. She searched his face for the lie, for the hidden agenda, and found something that looked suspiciously like sincerity. It terrified her more than any demand would have, because accepting his help meant admitting how desperately she needed it, meant surrendering the illusion of independence she had clung to like a shield. Why? She whispered. Why do you care what happens to me? Vincent was silent for a long moment, remembering his mother's funeral, the way she had looked so small in the casket, her hands finally at rest after a lifetime of work. Because someone should have cared what happened to my mother, he said finally. And nobody did. Consider this me correcting an old mistake. The rawness in his voice, the glimpse of old pain, made Elena's throat tight. She nodded slowly, accepting the gift because she had to. Because pride was a luxury she couldn't afford, and Sophia needed her mother alive more than she needed her mother to be proud. Thank you, she said quietly. I don't know how to repay this. Don't thank me yet, Vincent said, his tone shifting back to business. As of now, you have security. Marco will assign someone to escort you to and from work, and to check on your apartment periodically. If your ex-husband shows up again, you call this number immediately. He handed her a card with a number written in his own hand. Elena took it with trembling fingers, staring at the digits as if they might disappear. And the office cleaning job downtown, she said. I need to give notice, explain, already handled, Vincent said, though this was a lie. He would handle it in the morning, would make a call that would ensure Elena's departure was smooth and her final paycheck generous. What's your address? Elena recited it automatically, watching as Vincent typed it into his phone. She felt like a passenger in her own life, watching decisions being made around her and about her, and part of her wanted to protest, to assert some control over the situation. But the larger part, the part that was so tired she could barely think straight, the part that was terrified of Miguel showing up again, that part was grateful beyond words. Your daughter, Vincent said. Sophia. Where does she go after school? My neighbor watches her until I get home from the diner. She paused. Until I used to get home from the diner. Not anymore, Vincent said. From now on, Sophia stays in the after-school program at her school. I'll cover the cost. Elena's eyes filled with tears she couldn't stop. Mr. Costello, I can't accept all this. It's too much I don't deserve. It's not about deserving, Vincent interrupted gently. It's about what's necessary. Your daughter needs her mother healthy and safe. This is how we make that happen. The kindness was more painful than cruelty would have been. Breaking through defenses Elena had spent years building, she covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. All the fear and exhaustion and desperate hope finally finding release. Vincent looked away, giving her privacy, his jaw tight. He thought about calling Marco again, about finding Miguel Santos and having a conversation that would ensure the man never bothered Elena again. It would be easy, cleaner than involving police or courts, more permanent than restraining orders. But that would make him his father's son in truth, would cross a line he had sworn never to cross. Violence for business was one thing, violence for personal reasons another. He would protect Elena through legal means, through security and resources, not through the methods that had defined his father's reign. Elena finally looked up, wiping her eyes with the heels of her hands. I'm sorry, she said. This is unprofessional. You're human, Vincent said. That's not something to apologize for. She nodded, taking a shaking breath. I should get back to work. I still have go home, Vincent said firmly. Take the rest of the night off. Get some sleep. Come back tomorrow at a normal hour and we'll work out the new schedule. But the cleaning will get done. Elena, go home to your daughter. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion pulled at her like an anchor. She stood slowly, testing her ribs, and Vincent handed her the first aid kit. Ice for the ribs, ibuprofen for the pain, and if anything changes, if he shows up again, you call that number immediately. Someone will answer, day or night. Elena clutched the first aid kit and the card like talismans. Thank you, Mr. Costello. For everything. Vincent nodded, watching as she gathered her things and left, moving carefully, one hand pressed to her side. When she was gone, he pulled out his phone and made another call. Marco, he said. Miguel Santos. I want eyes on him 24/7. I want to know where he sleeps, where he eats, who he associates with, and I want security on Elena Martinez and her daughter starting immediately. discreet but thorough. He paused, listening to Marco's confirmation, then added, "And Marco, if Santos goes near her again, I want to know about it before it happens, not after." Clear. Crystal clear. Boss. Vincent ended the call and stood alone in the VIP lounge, surrounded by empty chairs and silent slot machines. A king in a kingdom built on luck and loss. He had just complicated his life enormously, had taken on responsibility for a woman and child he barely knew, had stepped into a situation that had no clean resolution. But as he thought about Elena's raw hands and exhausted eyes, about Sophia growing up without her mother because poverty ground people to dust, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. Some lines once crossed changed you forever. Vincent suspected this was one of them. The transformation happened gradually, like dawn breaking over the Atlantic, subtle at first, then undeniable. Elena worked her new schedule at the Golden Serpent, 45 hours that felt like vacation compared to the grinding marathon she had endured before. She slept 6 hours most nights, a luxury so profound she sometimes woke in panic, certain she had overslept and missed something crucial. Sophia bloomed under the change. The after-school program meant homework help, art projects, friends her own age instead of sitting quietly in Mrs. Chen's apartment watching television. Elena picked her up at 6 and they had dinner together. Real dinners, not reheated pasta eaten standing at the counter. They talked about Sophia's day, about the solar system project she was building, about the book fair coming up at school. For 3 weeks, life approached something resembling normal. Elena's ribs healed, the bruises fading to yellow then disappearing entirely. She saw Vincent occasionally on the casino floor, and they exchanged polite nods, professional acknowledgments that maintained appropriate boundaries. The security detail Marco had assigned was discreet, a rotating team that watched from distance. Never intrusive, but always present. Elena told herself she could get used to this, could accept this new reality without waiting for the other shoe to drop. But she had lived too long in survival mode to trust peace when she found it. The call came on a Thursday evening. Elena was leaving the casino, heading to her car in the employee parking lot, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end, then Miguel's voice, slurred and venomous. You think you're smart, Elena? Think you can hide behind your new rich boyfriend? Elena's blood went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone, Miguel. The restraining order. That piece of paper doesn't mean anything, and you know it. I've been watching you, Elena. Watching you walk around like you're somebody now. Watching our daughter get dropped off at that fancy after-school program. Must be nice having a sugar daddy pay for everything. He's not. Elena stopped herself, realizing she was justifying, explaining, giving Miguel ammunition. Don't call me again or what? You'll tell your mob boss boyfriend? You think he scares me? You should be scared, Elena said quietly. You should leave us alone and get help, Miguel. Before you do something you can't take back. Miguel laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I'm coming for what's mine, Elena. You owe me. That kid is half mine and I deserve my share. The line went dead. Elena stood in the parking lot, phone clutched in her shaking hand, fear and rage warring in her chest. She looked around, suddenly aware of shadows and corners, of how isolated the employee lot was at this hour. A car pulled up beside her, one of Marco's security team, a woman named Jackie with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Everything okay, Ms. Martinez? Elena wanted to say yes, wanted to handle this herself, wanted to prove she wasn't helpless. But Sophia's face flashed in her mind, and she thought about what Miguel might do if desperation and drugs pushed him over the edge. No, Elena said quietly. It's not okay. 20 minutes later, she sat in Vincent's office for the first time. The space was elegant but understated. Dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the boardwalk. Vincent stood at those windows now, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. I want the security increased, he said into the phone. And I want Santos found. Not approached, not engaged, just located and monitored. If he goes near the school, if he goes near the apartment, I want to know immediately. He ended the call and turned to face Elena, his expression controlled but his eyes betraying concern. Tell me exactly what he said. Elena recounted the conversation, watching Vincent's jaw tighten with each detail. When she finished, silence filled the office like smoke. He mentioned Sophia specifically, Vincent said. That's a threat against a child. He's her father, Elena said, though the words tasted like ash. He wouldn't hurt her. He's trying to scare me, to manipulate me into giving him money. People who wouldn't hurt their children don't use them as leverage, Vincent said flatly. He's escalating, Elena. The question is what we do about it. Elena stood suddenly unable to sit still. We call the police. File another report. Hope they actually do something this time. Vincent's expression suggested what he thought of that plan. Or, he said carefully, we handle it another way. The implication hung in the air. Elena had grown up in neighborhoods where problems got solved outside official channels, where the law was something that happened to you rather than something that protected you. She knew what Vincent was offering, and part of her, the part that remembered Miguel's fists, that heard his threats against her daughter, wanted to say yes. If you're talking about what I think you're talking about, Elena said slowly, then no. I won't have that on my conscience. I won't give Sofia a father who disappeared under mysterious circumstances, even if that father is threatening her safety. Especially then. Elena met his eyes, her own blazing with fierce conviction. Sofia deserves better than violence solving violence. She deserves to grow up knowing her mother chose the right path, even when the wrong one was easier. Vincent studied her for a long moment, seeing the steel beneath the exhaustion, the moral clarity that poverty and fear hadn't managed to corrupt. It was the same quality his mother had possessed, that refusal to compromise principles even when compromise would have been easier. All right, he said finally, we do it your way, but my security stays on you and Sofia 24/7 until this is resolved. No arguments, Elena nodded, relief flooding through her. Thank you for understanding. Don't thank me yet, Vincent said. Your way is harder and takes longer, and if he hurts you or Sofia while we're playing by the rules, I reserve the right to revisit this conversation. The words should have frightened her, but instead they felt like a safety net, knowing that if everything else failed, someone stood ready to do what was necessary. It was a dark comfort, one she tried not to examine too closely. Vincent walked her to her car, ignoring her protests that security was already present. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of ocean and boardwalk food, the eternal carnival atmosphere of Atlantic City at odds with the serious conversation they had just had. At her car, Vincent paused. How's Sofia doing? With all the changes? Elena's face softened immediately, the way it always did when anyone asked about her daughter. She's thriving. Her teacher says she's the most improved student in class. She's making friends, doing better in math, smiling more. Elena's voice caught. I didn't realize how much my stress was affecting her until it lifted. Children know, Vincent said quietly. They always know. Something in his tone made Elena look at him more closely. You said your mother cleaned floors. Was she... Did your father... She didn't have to finish the question. Vincent's expression answered it, old pain flickering across his features like lightning on a distant horizon. He was a hard man, Vincent said, choosing his words carefully. Believed that fear and force were how you maintained control. My mother bore the brunt of it so my sister and I wouldn't have to. She died thinking she had failed us, that we grew up damaged because she couldn't protect us enough. But you're not him, Elena said with sudden certainty. You could be, but you're not. That's a choice you make every day. Vincent looked at her, surprised by her insight, by the way she saw through his careful reputation to the man beneath. It's a choice that gets harder the more power you have, he said. Power makes cruelty easy. Then it's good you remember where you came from. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. Then Vincent stepped back, professional distance reasserting itself. Go home to your daughter, he said. And Elena, keep that number I gave you close. Day or night, if anything happens, you call. Elena nodded, climbing into her car, a 10-year-old Honda with a cracked windshield and questionable air conditioning. As she drove away, she watched Vincent in her rearview mirror, a silhouette against the neon lights of the casino. A powerful man choosing to use that power for protection rather than harm. Maybe, she thought, miracles weren't about divine intervention. Maybe they were about human beings making difficult choices, about kindness offered when cruelty would be easier, about connection forged across impossible divides. She thought about Miguel's threats, about the fear that still lived in her chest like a stone, and she thought about Vincent's quiet offer of violence as solution. Part of her wished she could accept, wished she could simply make Miguel disappear and never worry again. But Sophia's face filled her mind. Her daughter's innocent trust, her belief that the world was fundamentally good, that problems could be solved without becoming monsters yourself. Elena refused to betray that trust, refused to teach her daughter that the ends justified the means, even if it meant staying afraid a little longer, even if it meant taking the harder path. If you've made it this far in the story, if you're rooting for Elena and hoping she finds peace, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Her journey is just beginning, and the road ahead is going to test everything she believes about justice, redemption, and the price of safety. The next turn in this story will change everything. Elena drove through the quiet streets of Atlantic City, past the bright lights and dark alleys, carrying hope and fear in equal measure. Behind her, security followed at a discreet distance. Ahead of her, Sophia waited with a drawing she had made in art class, with stories about her day, with the uncomplicated love that made everything worthwhile. And somewhere in the darkness, Miguel plotted his next move, driven by entitlement and desperation, unaware that he was about to collide with forces far beyond his understanding. The collision, when it came, would reshape all their lives. But tonight, Elena just drove home, grateful for small mercies and unexpected allies, choosing to trust in the possibility of justice even when experience suggested otherwise. It was the bravest thing she had ever done. The crisis came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day when the Atlantic Ocean turned gray and angry. When the boardwalk emptied and even the most dedicated gamblers stayed home, Elena was at work reorganizing the supply closets on the third floor when her phone rang. Sophia's school, the caller ID read, and Elena's heart immediately began racing. Ms. Martinez, the principal's voice was carefully controlled. There's been an incident. Sophia is safe, but we need you to come to the school immediately. What happened? Is she hurt? There was a man here claiming to be her father. He tried to take her from the after-school program. We didn't release her, of course, but the situation became confrontational. The police are here now. Elena's vision narrowed to a pinpoint. I'm on my way. She ran through the casino, not caring about protocol or appearances, her shoes slapping against the polished floors. She burst into the lobby and nearly collided with Vincent, who was speaking with one of his floor managers. Elena, what? Miguel tried to take Sophia from school. She gasped, already moving toward the exit. I have to go, I have to. Vincent's hand closed gently but firmly on her arm. You're in no state to drive. Marco will take you. I'm coming with you. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some illusion of handling this alone, but terror overrode pride. She nodded, and within 2 minutes they were in Vincent's Mercedes, Marco behind the wheel, cutting through traffic with efficient urgency. Vincent made calls as they drove, his voice clipped and controlled. I want our attorney at the school. Now, and get me everything on Miguel Santos, where he's been, who he's been with, how he knew about the after-school program. Elena sat rigid in the passenger seat, hands clenched so tight her nails cut crescents into her palms. This is my fault, she whispered. I should have seen this coming. Should have prepared better. This is not your fault, Vincent said firmly. This is on him. All of it. They arrived at the school to find 2 police cars in the parking lot, their lights casting red and blue shadows across the wet pavement. Elena was out of the car before it fully stopped, running toward the building with Vincent close behind. Inside, Sophia sat in the principal's office, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm building, her eyes red from crying. The moment she saw Elena, she launched herself from the chair. Mommy! Elena caught her daughter, holding her so tight Sophia squeaked in protest. I'm here, baby. I'm here. You're safe. Over Sophia's head, Elena met the eyes of the principal, Mrs. Henderson, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. 2 police officers stood near the window taking notes. Ms. Martinez, Mrs. Henderson said. Perhaps we should speak privately while Sophia waits with the counselor. Elena didn't want to let go of her daughter, but she nodded, allowing the school counselor, a young woman named Jessica who Sophia knew and trusted, to lead the little girl to an adjacent room. Vincent positioned himself near the door, a silent presence that somehow made Elena feel less alone. The story emerged in pieces. Miguel had arrived at the after-school program claiming he was there to pick up his daughter, that there had been a family emergency. The supervisor, trained to verify such claims, had asked for identification and checked the approved pickup list. When Miguel's name wasn't there, she refused to release Sofia. Miguel had become agitated, then aggressive, demanding to see his daughter, insisting on his parental rights. Other staff had been called. Miguel had tried to push past them, to get to the room where the children were having snack time. Sofia had seen him through the door window, had started crying, had hidden under a table. Security had been called. Police had been called. Miguel had fled before they arrived, but not before making threats about coming back, about taking what was his, about teaching everyone a lesson about interfering in his family. The police officers, 2 young men who looked barely out of the academy, took Elena's statement with professional detachment. They noted the existing restraining order, the previous violations, the escalating pattern of behavior. "We'll file charges for attempted kidnapping and violation of the restraining order," one officer said. "But ma'am, I have to be honest. He'll likely make bail within 24 hours. Your best protection is to keep that restraining order active and be vigilant." "Vigilant," Elena repeated, the word tasting like failure. "My daughter is terrified. My ex-husband tried to kidnap her from school. And your advice is to be vigilant?" The officer had the grace to look uncomfortable. "The system isn't perfect, ma'am. We can increase patrols around your residence and the school, but you can't be everywhere," Elena finished. "I understand. Thank you for your time." Vincent, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "Officers, I'm Vincent Costello. I own the Golden Serpent Casino where Ms. Martinez works. We have a comprehensive security team, and we're willing to coordinate with local police to ensure her safety and her daughter's safety." The officers exchanged glances, and Elena saw recognition flicker in their eyes. Everyone in Atlantic City knew Vincent Costello's name, knew his reputation, knew that crossing him was inadvisable. "That's generous, Mr. Costello," the first officer said carefully. "We appreciate any assistance from the private sector." After the police left, after the paperwork was filed and the official statements taken, Elena retrieved Sofia from the counselor's office. Her daughter's eyes were puffy, her voice small. "Is Daddy mad at me?" The question broke Elena's heart. "Oh, baby, no. This has nothing to do with you. Daddy is sick and he's making bad choices, but none of that is your fault. Do you understand?" Sofia nodded, but Elena could see the confusion and fear still written on her young face. "Can we go home now?" "Soon," Elena promised. "Very soon." Vincent drove them back to Elena's apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in a building that had seen better decades. Marco followed in a second car, along with 2 additional security personnel. Elena barely registered the convoy, too focused on Sofia's small hand in hers, on the tremors that occasionally ran through her daughter's body. At the apartment, Vincent did a quick sweep of the rooms, a habit from his youth, checking corners and closets and lock integrity. Everything was secure, but he left Marco and 1 other guard in the hallway. 24-hour watch until further notice. Elena put Sofia to bed early, reading 3 stories instead of the usual one, stroking her hair until the little girl's breathing evened out in sleep. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Vincent in her tiny kitchen, making coffee with the efficiency of someone who understood the importance of small comforts. "You don't have to stay," Elena said, though she was grateful he had. "I know," Vincent replied, handing her a mug. "But I'm going to anyway." They sat at her kitchen table, a rickety thing Elena had bought at a yard sale for $15, chipped mugs between them, the sounds of the city filtering through thin walls. It was a world away from Vincent's penthouse overlooking the marina, from the luxury and power he lived in daily. "I can't keep living like this," Elena said finally, looking over my shoulder, waiting for him to show up, wondering if today is the day he hurts one of us. "This isn't a life. It's just survival." Vincent sipped his coffee, choosing his words carefully. "What do you want to happen, Elena? Really happen if you could choose any outcome?" Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring into her mug as if it held answers. "I want him gone," she said finally. "Not dead, not hurt, just gone. Out of our lives permanently. I want Sofia to grow up without fear. I want to sleep through the night without jumping at every sound. I want to stop being a victim." The last word came out fierce, angry, and Vincent recognized it as the moment when survival instinct transformed into something sharper, harder, more dangerous. "Then we make that happen," he said. "Legally, thoroughly, permanently, how? The system has failed us at every turn. Restraining orders, police reports, family court. None of it works when the other person doesn't care about consequences. Vincent pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts, found what he was looking for. I know people, Elena. Not the kind I use for business, but the other kind. Lawyers who specialize in exactly this situation. Advocates who fight for women and children against abusive partners. People who know how to work the system in ways you and I don't. That costs money, Elena said quietly. Money I don't have. Money I do have, Vincent countered. And before you argue about charity or handouts or independence, think about Sophia. Think about what she needs versus what your pride demands. The words were harsh but true, and Elena felt them land like stones in still water. You've already done so much, she said. The job, the security, the after-school program. I can't ask for more, you're not asking. I'm offering. There's a difference. Elena met his eyes across her cheap kitchen table, seeing the determination there, the echo of old pain that drove him to prevent in others what he couldn't prevent in his own family. Why are you doing this, Vincent? Really? Not the story about your mother? Not the employee retention speech? Why? Vincent was silent for a long time, long enough that Elena thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost uncertain, an unusual quality for a man so accustomed to authority. Because you remind me of what courage actually looks like, he said. Not the kind that comes from power or weapons or having people afraid of you. The kind that gets up every morning and keeps going when everything in your life says to give up. That's real strength, Elena. That's the kind of person my mother was, and I failed her. I won't fail you. The raw honesty in his words, the vulnerability he rarely showed, made Elena's throat tight. You didn't fail your mother, she said gently. You were a child. Children can't save their parents from the world. Neither can one woman save another, Vincent said. But maybe I can level the playing field enough that you can save yourself. Elena reached across the table, covering his hand with hers, a gesture that crossed professional boundaries, that acknowledged the connection forming between them whether they wanted it or not. Thank you, she said simply, for seeing me, for seeing Sophia, for caring when you didn't have to. Vincent looked down at her hand on his, at the rough knuckles and work-worn skin, at the strength visible in every line and callus. Caring isn't something you choose, he said. It just happens whether you're ready for it or not. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility, with the recognition that their lives had become entangled in ways neither had anticipated. Then Sophia called out from the bedroom, a sleepy cry for her mother, and the spell broke. Elena went to comfort her daughter, and Vincent made more phone calls, setting in motion a chain of events that would end Miguel's ability to terrorize his family. Legal proceedings, emergency custody hearings, coordination with law enforcement at higher levels than 2 patrol officers could access. By the time dawn broke over Atlantic City, painting the ocean gold and pink, Vincent had mobilized resources that would have been impossible for Elena alone. Lawyers were reviewing case files. Judges were being contacted through proper channels. A network of protection was being constructed, thread by thread, until it was strong enough to hold. Elena emerged from Sophia's room to find Vincent still at her kitchen table, his suit jacket draped over the chair, sleeves rolled up, phone and laptop covering her table. He looked up when she entered, exhaustion evident in the lines around his eyes. It started, he said. By this afternoon, Miguel will be served with emergency custody suspension papers. By end of week, we'll have hearings scheduled that actually matter. The police have been contacted by people they can't ignore. He paused. It's not over, Elena, but it's the beginning of the end. Elena sank into the chair across from him, overwhelmed by the machinery he had set in motion, with nothing more than determination and the right connections. How do I ever repay this? Vincent shook his head. You don't. You take care of Sophia. You build the life you deserve. That's payment enough. As the morning light grew stronger, filtering through her apartment's thin curtains, Elena allowed herself to believe, truly believe for the first time, that escape was possible. That the cage Miguel had built around her life could be dismantled. That freedom was something she might actually achieve. Vincent stood to leave, shrugging back into his jacket, becoming once again the powerful figure people feared and respected. But Elena had seen behind that mask now, had glimpsed the man who still carried his mother's memory like a wound. She walked him to the door, where Marco waited in the hallway. Vincent paused on the threshold, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You're going to be okay," he said, and it sounded like a promise, like a vow he would move heaven and earth to keep. "I know," Elena said, and for the first time in years, she meant it. The legal machinery Vincent set in motion moved with surprising speed. Within 72 hours, Miguel was arrested for attempted kidnapping, violation of a restraining order, and making terroristic threats. The charges, bolstered by school security footage and testimony from multiple witnesses, were serious enough that bail was set high, too high for Miguel to meet. Elena attended the emergency custody hearing with an attorney named Margaret Reeves, a woman in her 60s who had spent 3 decades fighting domestic violence cases. Margaret was sharp, relentless, and came recommended by Vincent with a simple endorsement: "She wins." The courtroom was smaller than Elena had imagined, less dramatic than television had led her to believe. But when the judge, a stern woman named Patricia Okafor, entered, Elena felt the weight of the moment settle over her like a blanket. Miguel's public defender, a tired-looking man juggling too many cases, mounted a half-hearted defense. His client was a veteran, the lawyer argued, a man struggling with PTSD and substance abuse who loved his daughter and deserved a chance at rehabilitation and reconnection. Margaret dismantled the argument with surgical precision. She presented the hospital records from when Miguel had broken Elena's wrist 2 years ago. The police reports documenting 8 separate domestic disturbance calls. The school incident captured on camera, showing Miguel's aggression and Sophia's terror. The pattern of escalation that suggested not a man struggling with illness, but a man who believed he owned his family and would punish them for escaping his control. Then Margaret called Elena to the stand. "Ms. Martinez," Margaret said, her voice gentle but firm, "tell the court about your relationship with Miguel Santos." Elena took a breath, feeling Vincent's presence in the gallery behind her, feeling Margaret's steady confidence, feeling the weight of this moment that would determine her daughter's future. Then she spoke. She told them about the marriage that had started with love and deteriorated into control. About Miguel's jealousy, his drinking, his conviction that Elena existed to serve him. About the night he had pushed her down the stairs when she was pregnant with Sophia, claiming it was an accident, swearing it would never happen again. She told them about the discharge from the Navy, about Miguel's refusal to seek help, about the drugs that made him paranoid and violent, about the divorce he had fought not because he loved her, but because he couldn't stand losing possession of her. She told them about working 3 jobs, about sleeping 2 hours a night, about choosing between electricity and groceries, all while looking over her shoulder for the man who believed he still owned her. And she told them about Sophia, bright, loving Sophia, who had started having nightmares, who flinched at loud noises, who asked if it was her fault Daddy was angry. By the time Elena finished, the courtroom was silent. Even Miguel's attorney looked uncomfortable, shuffling papers without meeting anyone's eyes. Judge Okafor reviewed the evidence, her expression thoughtful. Then she spoke, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen too many cases like this end badly. "Mr. Santos, you have demonstrated through your actions that you pose a clear and present danger to your ex-wife and your daughter. Your pattern of escalation, culminating in an attempt to forcibly remove your child from school, suggests that without intervention, someone will be seriously harmed or killed." Miguel started to protest, but his attorney touched his arm, shaking his head. Therefore, Judge Okafor continued, "I am issuing an order of full custody to Ms. Martinez, with 0 visitation rights for Mr. Santos. Furthermore, I am extending the restraining order to include a 500-yard minimum distance from Ms. Martinez, her daughter, their residence, the daughter's school, and Ms. Martinez's place of employment. Any violation will result in immediate arrest and prosecution." She looked directly at Miguel, her gaze hard. "Mr. Santos, I strongly recommend you use your time to address your substance abuse and anger management issues. Perhaps one day, if you demonstrate genuine change and your daughter wishes contact when she is old enough to decide for herself, the situation can be revisited. But that day is not today, and it will not be soon." The gavel fell, and Elena felt something release in her chest. A tension she had carried for so long she had forgotten what it felt like to breathe without it. Outside the courthouse, Margaret shook Elena's hand with genuine warmth. You did well in there. Your testimony made the difference. Thank you, Elena said, her voice thick, for everything. I don't know how I'll ever. Mr. Costello has taken care of my fees, Margaret said gently. Your job is to take care of yourself and that little girl. Build the life you deserve. After Margaret left, Elena stood on the courthouse steps feeling the spring sun on her face, listening to the sounds of the city that had always felt like a trap, but now felt like possibility. Vincent appeared beside her, having waited in the car during the proceedings. How did it go? He asked, though Marco had already texted him the results. We won, Elena said, and then she was crying, years of fear and exhaustion pouring out in great shaking sobs. Vincent stood beside her, not touching, just present, a steady anchor while the storm passed through her. When she finally composed herself, wiping her eyes with tissues Vincent silently provided, she looked at him with an expression of gratitude so profound it made his chest tight. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You gave me my life back. You gave Sophia her childhood back. You did that yourself, Vincent said. I just helped remove some obstacles. They stood there on the courthouse steps. Two people from different worlds who had found unexpected connection in the space where power met need, where isolation met understanding. The weeks that followed were an adjustment. Elena learned to sleep without fear, to walk to her car without checking shadows, to answer her phone without her heart racing. Sophia's nightmares became less frequent, then rare, then stopped altogether. The little girl's laughter returned, fuller and more frequent, the sound of a child who finally felt safe. Elena still worked at the Golden Serpent, but her role had evolved. Vincent had promoted her to facilities manager, overseeing the entire housekeeping and maintenance operation. It came with a significant raise, an office, and responsibilities that challenged her mind rather than just her endurance. She discovered she was good at management, at organization, at seeing inefficiencies and solving problems. The other employees respected her because she had done every job she now supervised, because she never asked them to do anything she hadn't done herself. Vincent watched her transformation with quiet satisfaction. She attended management training courses he paid for. She hired 2 additional staff members she had identified as overqualified for their positions. She implemented systems that improved efficiency and reduced costs. In the evenings, Elena picked up Sophia from the after-school program they both now loved. They had moved to a better apartment, nothing fancy but clean and safe, in a building with security and neighbors who smiled in the hallways. Sophia had her own room, decorated with stars and planets for the budding astronomer she dreamed of becoming. On a warm evening in late May, Elena was reviewing schedules in her office when Vincent knocked on her open door. She looked up, surprised. He rarely came to the administrative floor. Got a minute, he asked. Of course. Elena gestured to the chair across from her desk, still slightly amazed that she had a desk, an office, a professional role beyond survival. Vincent sat, and Elena noticed he seemed almost nervous, an unusual quality for a man so confident in his domain. I wanted to check in, he said. See how you're settling into everything. It's going well, Elena said. Really well. The team is responsive, the new scheduling system is working, and we're actually under budget for the quarter. Vincent nodded, pleased but not surprised. You have a gift for this, for seeing what needs to be done and making it happen. I learned from the best teachers, Elena said with a small smile. Desperation and necessity. Still, Vincent said, not everyone could have done what you did. Come back from what you went through and build something new. Elena was quiet for a moment, thinking about the journey from scrubbing floors at 3 a.m. to sitting in an office making decisions that affected dozens of employees. I had help, she said finally. More help than I deserved. You deserved every bit of it, Vincent said firmly, and more. The air between them shifted, charged with something neither quite acknowledged. They had maintained professional boundaries carefully, both aware of the power dynamics, the potential for misunderstanding. But something had been growing in the spaces between their interactions, in the shared understanding of survival and choice, in the recognition of wounds that matched. Elena, Vincent said carefully, I want to ask you something, and I need you to know you can say no without any consequences to your job or our working relationship. Elena's heart beat faster, uncertain what was coming. Okay, would you have dinner with me? Not as your employer, not as the person who helped you, just as Vincent asking Elena, Because I'd like to know you better outside these walls. Elena stared at him, surprised despite the undercurrent she had felt building between them. Vincent, the power dynamic alone makes this complicated. You're still my boss, I know, Vincent said, which is why I'm also offering you a transfer to our property in Philadelphia. Same role, same pay, reporting to someone else entirely. If you prefer to keep things professional, I understand completely. But I had to ask, Elena. I had to know if what I feel might be something you feel too. Elena's mind raced. The safe choice was to decline, to maintain boundaries, to protect herself from potential complications. But safety had never brought her happiness, had never led to growth or connection or anything beyond mere survival. Yes, she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. Yes to dinner. No to the transfer. I like working here, and I trust you to keep professional and personal separate. Vincent's face transformed with a smile that Elena had never seen before, genuine, unguarded, almost boyish in its relief. Friday, then? There's a small Italian place in Margate, family-owned. No one from the casino crowd. Friday sounds perfect. After Vincent left, Elena sat in her office for a long moment, processing what had just happened. She thought about calling her neighbor Mrs. Chen, who had become a friend and confidant. She thought about the risks and complications, about office gossip and power dynamics and all the reasons this was inadvisable. Then she thought about Vincent at her kitchen table at dawn, exhausted but determined to help her. About the way he had respected her choices even when violence would have been easier. About the pain in his eyes when he talked about his mother. About the man he had chosen to be despite the example his father had set. She thought about second chances and new beginnings. About the fact that surviving wasn't the same as living, and that maybe, just maybe, she deserved both. That evening, she told Sophia about the promotion, about the raise, about how hard work and determination had paid off. She didn't mention Vincent or dinner or the complicated feelings developing in her chest. Some things needed time to understand before they could be explained. Sophia hugged her tight. I'm proud of you, Mommy. You're the best. Elena held her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the solid reality of this child she had fought so hard to protect. We're going to be okay, baby. Better than okay. And for the first time in her life, Elena believed it completely. The fear was gone. The constant vigilance had eased. Miguel was in treatment, court-ordered and supervised, far from their lives. The cage had opened, and Elena had walked through it into sunlight. She had been tested by fire and had emerged not burned but tempered, stronger than she had known she could be. The woman who had scrubbed floors at 3 a.m. felt like a memory, like someone she had been in another life. This life, this new existence built on the ruins of the old, felt like dawn after the longest night, and Elena was ready to see what the daylight brought. 18 months later, the Golden Serpent Casino gleamed under October sunshine, its facade recently renovated to include gold-tinted windows that reflected the Atlantic City skyline. Inside, the operations ran with efficiency that had become the standard under new management. Protocols Elena Martinez had helped design and implement. Elena stood in the executive conference room on the top floor, presenting quarterly reports to Vincent and the board of directors. She wore a charcoal gray suit, her hair cut in a professional style that framed her face, her posture confident. The woman who had once hidden behind a cleaning cart was gone, replaced by someone who commanded respect through competence and earned authority. As you can see from the data, Elena said, gesturing to the presentation on the screen behind her, employee retention has increased 32% since we implemented the full-time benefits restructuring. Productivity is up, sick days are down, and customer satisfaction scores have improved across all departments. One of the board members, an older man named Patterson, who had initially been skeptical of Vincent's decision to promote a former housekeeper, nodded approvingly. Impressive work, Ms. Martinez. The cost-benefit analysis alone justifies the investment. After the meeting concluded, Elena gathered her materials while the board members filed out. Vincent remained, watching her with the expression that had become familiar over the past year, pride mixed with something warmer, more personal. You were brilliant, he said when they were alone. Patterson practically wrote you a love letter. Elena laughed, the sound easy and genuine. He told me 6 months ago that promoting me was a mistake. I enjoy proving people wrong, I've noticed, Vincent said dryly. It's one of your many talents. They had been seeing each other for 14 months now, carefully at first, then with growing certainty. Dinner dates had become weekend trips. Separate lives had begun braiding together in ways that felt natural rather than forced. Vincent had met Sophia officially 4 months ago, a carefully orchestrated introduction at a family-friendly restaurant where the little girl had interrogated him about everything from his favorite color to whether he believed in aliens. Sophia had eventually declared him acceptable, which Vincent considered a higher honor than any business award he had received. He had learned to braid hair, badly, and to appreciate animated movies about space exploration. He attended school recitals and soccer games, sitting in bleachers with other parents, anonymous in jeans and a baseball cap, just another adult supporting a child. Elena had met Vincent's sister, Maria, a social worker in Philadelphia, who had looked at her brother's girlfriend with sharp assessment before pulling Elena into a hug and whispering, "Thank you for making him smile again." The relationship had been challenging at times, navigating professional boundaries and personal intimacy, managing public perception and private reality. But both of them had been through enough darkness to appreciate light when they found it, to choose connection over isolation, to risk vulnerability despite the potential for pain. Now, in the empty conference room, Vincent crossed to where Elena stood. "You have plans tonight?" "Sophia has a sleepover at her friend Madison's house," Elena said. "First one she's been brave enough to attend. I was planning to catch up on paperwork and enjoy the rare quiet." "Or," Vincent said, taking her hand, "you could have dinner with me. There's something I want to show you." 2 hours later, they stood on the deck of a beach house in Longport, watching the sun paint the ocean in shades of amber and rose. The house was beautiful, 3 stories of glass and weathered wood, designed to maximize the ocean view while maintaining privacy from the road. "What do you think?" Vincent asked, watching Elena's face as she took in the space. "It's gorgeous," Elena said, running her hand along the deck railing. "Whose is it?" "Potentially ours," Vincent said quietly. "If you want it to be." Elena turned to face him, surprise and uncertainty warring in her expression. "Vincent, this is enormous. We've talked about moving in together eventually, but this is too much too fast," Vincent finished. "I know, but hear me out." He led her inside through rooms filled with light and possibility. The kitchen was modern and spacious, with room for Sophia to do homework at the island while dinner cooked. The living room had built-in bookshelves and a fireplace. Upstairs there were 4 bedrooms, a master suite, a room perfectly sized for a 7-year-old who loved stars, a guest room and an office. "Sophia needs stability," Vincent said as they stood in what could be her daughter's room. "She needs to know that the good things in her life aren't temporary, that safety isn't something that can be taken away. And Elena, I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere, that this isn't a temporary thing for me." Elena's eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide. "Vincent Costello, are you asking me to move in with you?" "I'm asking you to build a life with me," Vincent said. "A real life, not just dating between your schedule and mine. I'm asking if you and Sophia want to wake up to ocean views and go to sleep knowing you're home. I'm asking if you're ready to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop and start trusting that good things can last." Elena looked around the room, imagining Sophia's reaction to the space, to the beach access, to the security of a home that felt permanent. She thought about the cramped apartment they currently shared, serviceable but never quite home. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from scrubbing floors at 3 in the morning to standing in a beach house discussing future with a man who had seen her at her lowest and chosen to lift her up. "What about work?" she asked practically, even as her heart was already saying yes. "The optics of the facilities director living with the owner. Transfer to Philadelphia is still on the table if you want it," Vincent said, "or we make it clear to everyone that our personal relationship doesn't affect professional decisions. You've earned your position, Elena. Everyone knows that. But if it makes you uncomfortable, we find another solution." Elena walked to the window, looking out at the ocean that had always been part of the Atlantic City landscape, but never quite accessible to her. Too expensive, too much a luxury for someone just surviving. Now it was being offered as everyday beauty, as home. She turned back to Vincent, seeing the hope in his eyes, the vulnerability of someone who had spent most of his life armored against emotion, now standing exposed, waiting for her answer. Yes, she said simply. Yes to the house. Yes to building a life together. Yes to trusting that this is real and lasting. Yes to all of it. Vincent crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms, and Elena let herself be held. Let herself feel the solid reality of this man who had become her partner in every sense of the word. They told Sophia the next evening, taking her to the beach house and watching her face transform with wonder as she explored room after room, finally standing on the deck looking out at the ocean with an expression of pure joy. "We're really going to live here?" she asked, her voice small with hope. "Really and truly?" Elena confirmed. "This is our home now if you want it to be." Sophia threw her arms around her mother, then around Vincent, then dragged them both to see the room that would be hers, already planning where her telescope would go, which wall would hold her star charts, how she would fall asleep to the sound of waves. That night, after Sophia had finally wound down and fallen asleep in the car on the way back to the apartment, Elena and Vincent sat in his car in front of her building, hands linked across the console. "Thank you," Elena said quietly, "for seeing me when I was invisible, for helping me when I couldn't help myself, for giving Sophia and me a chance at the life we deserved but never thought we could have." "You gave yourself that chance," Vincent said. "I just removed some obstacles. Everything else, the strength, the resilience, the refusal to give up, that was all you." Elena leaned across the console, kissing him softly. "Still," she said, "thank you for being the kind of man who uses power to protect instead of harm. Your mother would be proud of who you became." Vincent's throat tightened, emotion making speech difficult. "I hope so," he managed finally. "I really hope so." 3 months later, they moved into the beach house. Elena's apartment furniture looked small and shabby in the new space, so they donated most of it and bought pieces. Together, a collaborative process where Sophia got to choose the color of her bedroom walls and Elena picked out a dining table large enough for family dinners and homework. Projects Vincent's sister, Maria, came for the housewarming, along with Mrs. Chen and her husband, Sophia's school friends and their parents, employees from the casino who had become Elena's friends, Margaret Reeves, the attorney, even Marco and members of the security team who had protected Elena and Sophia during the darkest days. The house filled with laughter and conversation, with the sounds of children playing on the beach and adults sharing stories over wine and good food. Elena stood in her kitchen, and felt overwhelmed by the simple miracle of joy, of community, of chosen family.